Welcome to Rojo Rest Hour, your ultimate destination for rest, peace, and power. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Majors, and every episode is dedicated to one thing: helping women slow down, let go of the hustle, and embrace the flow. It's time to rest. Hey everyone, and welcome to part 2. This is Rojo Rest Hour, and this is the second of our 3-part series with grief coach Michelle Houghton. On our last episode, we talked about grief is heavy, so why do we carry it alone? And just talked about the weight of suffering in silence and how healing starts when we stop pretending that we're okay, when we connect with one another, and the word that Michelle used several times yesterday, honor our pain without being consumed by it. And so today we're leaning into kind of a different truth, and that is about how trauma teaches us to fight. We've heard about trauma-informed care, trauma-informed approaches to work, but there's also kind of some trauma-informed fighting that we do that we want to just stop and take a look at. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this thing that we do about staying guarded, stay ready, stay in motion, no matter the cost. But sometimes, if you're someone like me, sometimes you just get too tired to fight and your body doesn't want to fight anymore. So in this episode, we're just going to be talking about laying down that armor and choosing stillness over survival. So, Michelle Houghton, welcome back. Day 2.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for what we're going to discuss, and especially with understanding how to really go inward and start healing our trauma so we can get to that nice place of rest. So I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's dig into it here. First question that kind of, comes up for me is about this idea of fighting, right? This fight spirit that we have, that we cultivate. And a lot of it does come from trauma. A lot of it is learned, right? Because we pass down generations of this fighting spirit as a matter of survival, right? And then we learn to be fighters. And at some point in our journey, it's important to be a fighter. But at another point, sometimes that fighting spirit isn't serving us. So I want to start out with this idea of how trauma teaches us to fight, and your thoughts about that concept just in general, where you start thinking about it.
I love how you use the word fight, because fight is a trauma response. We have the sympathetic nervous system, we have the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we think of the word fight, that's exactly what our body is telling us. That's what our nervous system is telling us. So when we feel that emotion of fighting, whatever that looks like for you, I know for me, my fight response was anger. And I think a lot of us kind of can relate to that being how we show up, especially when we are in a fearful situation. If we are feeling threatened, either we're going to look really big and get angry, or we might freeze, and we might just kind of skedaddle, we might run. But for me, I was that angry person. Like, I was a fighter, right? But when we see ourselves connecting to a situation like that, let's start using that as a compass, as a guide as to what else is going on. And remember yesterday I talked about being curious and not judgmental. Be curious about it. And that's how we really start the healing process. We have to connect to that emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. That fight, that idea, that is an energy response to a trauma response. So the question is, how do we start healing that trauma response? How do we reframe how we're showing up to that situation?
Well, when we look historically, there's a lot to be angry about. Let's get clear, right? There's a lot that we, in particular as Black women, have dealt with. And in fact, there was something, I was listening to this comedian who was talking about the Super Bowl with Kendrick. This is the halftime show with Kendrick Lamar, and he was talking about how he said, "Wait, is that Serena? Is that Serena dancing?" She started dancing, doing her crip walk, and there's lots of stories about when she won and did the crip walk before, and they really came at her hard, like doing that dance. It's ghetto, it's inappropriate, all this stuff. But he said something that's really interesting. He says, "Wow, it was just really good to see a Black woman dancing, and she was smiling, and she was free, and she was like, you know what? I'm going to take this moment. I'm going to take it. Right. And there's also some backstory and all of that. But the idea of freedom and dancing and joy, it's over there. Right. And so, but we can access our anger. And I think that anger is probably a more acceptable emotion. It's easier to be angry than to say, I'm sad. I am devastated that you did that to me. I am rocked to my core. Nobody's going to say that. Nobody's going to give you that. Like, I'm not giving you that. And I've been accused of that. Like, I'm not going to give you my tears. I'm not going to let you see me sweat. But I am sad. I am hurting. I am sweating. So there's that piece of anger has a use and it has a purpose. But how do we make joy or make our, like, you know what? I'm doing me. And you see a lot of memes and videos now where, Black women they say, where's all the Black women after this person's in office? And they cut to them doing the electric slide. They cut to Black women like
Right.
dinner, right? Like this feeling of, I did all I can do and I'm free. I would love to see that more in our lives where you're like, I did everything I could do to save this relationship or this marriage or this job, whatever it is, and have that freedom to walk away. But instead, that anger piece always seems to be right there, right? You have any thoughts about that?
I do. And I think it's because conditioning. As we are Black women, what is the relation to that angry Black woman? Oh, there's that angry Black woman. We are passionate. It comes out in our tone when we're speaking about something. Oh, there's that anger, right? I've been used as, oh, there's that angry Black woman. We have to individually connect to our emotions, right? And start removing our masks. I love how you use and talked about Serena. And I saw an interview with her after the Super Bowl halftime, and she was so excited that she was actually doing that. And it was all about releasing that mask, stepping into her authentic self. This is her community. This is Compton. This is like people in her neighborhood. This is real to her. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have to start removing our masks, allowing ourselves to be our authentic selves without apologies. We apologize for just showing up the way we want to show up. Why is that? We don't have to apologize. And if we are angry about something, ask ourselves, why am I angry about this? If it's valid, allow yourself to really be angry in that moment. But if it's not something that we are connected to, if it's not an emotion that serves as purpose for what we are going through, then we also need to allow ourselves, outside of anyone else, to figure out why and owe that to ourselves and validate our feelings. I feel we don't validate our feelings enough. Mm-hmm. We have to be mom. We have to be sister. You use the current status of the world. People are looking for the Black woman. Well, what are you going to do? I've seen so many videos of families telling their children, especially white children, if you're ever in danger, find the Black woman. They'll help you. How is that? We're still trying to protect our own, right? And how do we show up in a world that they want our help, but then crucify it when we give it? Well, then we just have to, for myself, when I get to that point, it's because I chose to get to that point. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with the consequence. But I had to get there because I'm not everyone's weapon. Right. So when I also looked at the trauma responses, anger, freezing, disassociation, it made sense, especially when we were talking about our experiences and how we correlate that, how we connect that, and allow ourselves to not have to be the person that has to solve everyone's problems, because it's not our responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you said something earlier about they want our help, and I wanted to say they want our help, but they don't want our voice, right? They help, but just help quietly or help in a way that feels comfortable to me, right? And so, but a lot of it, and I said this on a video on my homepage of my RojoRest.com, where we've been led to believe that our value comes from our labor and not our love. So when we try to give love and experience that love piece, I often, sometimes I just think that it's received differently than if it were somebody else, right? It's like the love piece to be soft and just love and just, right? Um, it's hard. How I
Mhm.
interpret that is it is hard for Black women oftentimes to show love. Part of it is because we don't feel safe just giving our love up front, right? Because what
Absolutely.
we've internalized and what we've downloaded is that it's about our labor, our ability to, take one chicken wing and a potato and feed 30
Mhm.
people. It's our, ability to continue to laugh and be strong. And that Black girl magic is not magic. It's labor, a lot of it,
Mhm.
emotional
Yeah.
labor, mental labor, physical labor. It is not magic. And so, I feel like there needs to be some acknowledgement of not only for folks to understand, but as for Black women as a means of our own liberation to be like, no, I'm not, this isn't magical. Yes, there's magic to some degree, but why do we have to, why isn't there white girl magic or why isn't there, Latina girl magic? It's Black girl magic. There's something that for me that feels like there's an expectation or some distance from our humanity. And we just call it
Mhm.
magic. It's not magical. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is this idea that you mentioned about when we're getting into conflict and where we go when we, you know, how we internalize this conflict. And one of the things when I do a training, and we're talking about difficult conversations, one of the fundamental questions that have us fight is the question, what does this thing say about me? What do I believe? By virtue of
Mhm.
this argument, what are you saying about me as a person? And that's not just Black women, that's everybody. Like we fight and we think it's about this thing, but it's really about what you're thinking that it says about you as a person or a human or some part of your identity. And I think that those are some natural things, but it's also
Mm.
particular and it shows up a different way as it relates to this idea called Black woman. Black women, Black womanhood.
I love how you pointed out identity, and I think that's where we often get stuck is we have our own personal identity outside of societal identity, and then we have a hard connection on how we make the two intersect, right? How do we be both things? And for myself, and from a lot of the clients that I help, it's wait, so I can be myself unapologetically. And like you mentioned, what is it that I need? When we get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we hear this self love error, I want to be in this soft era, self love. Okay, well, what does that look like? What
Mhm.
does a soft era for a Black woman look like? Can we be soft? As we are looking now, we see that we're trying to be soft and we're getting criticized left and right for not showing up because we're trying to be in our healing era. So I love how you were talking about relationships and love and what that looks like. And when you mentioned that, I thought about I've never really allowed myself to dream about what love may look like. What, what may a relationship of love look like for me outside of what, my mama told me it was going to look like for me or what my spouse who I am married to, their idea, you know, and being okay with the consequences. Maybe sometimes we don't want to do that because we realize our current life in which we are living doesn't match what we internally believe that we should be aligned with, right? We might not be in a relationship that's what we want to be in. We might not be in a job that serves us the way that we want to serve, and we're not being represented or respected the way that we know our job title should be and our experience should. So what do we do? That fear stops us from allowing ourselves to dream because then are we good enough to do that? Are we going to be able to accomplish that? And we just have to, as women, go back to realizing how beautifully we are.
Mhm. Mhm. in a world that doesn't necessarily center our beauty. Well, it's appropriate, it's taken, it's
I
like
was getting ready to say they
yeah,
love it, but they don't like it
right,
on
right.
us.
So I'm gonna play angel's advocate for a second. And I'm going to go back to an email that I got when I did a training, and it was a Black woman. She said, "Yo, sis, you can't be telling Black women to show up as your true self. That's dangerous. That's reckless. And nobody wants us." She was just really in a, I heard the trauma, right? So I didn't take it like I was just not a good, any of that. What she was saying was, that's not a thing. Showing up as your true self, you trying to get folks fired out of here. You're trying to have people who, don't feel like are going to get othered, because sometimes it's just hard to relate in those ways that we communicate, in those ways that we express ourselves. So part of our success has been our ability to pack it in, put it in a box, and do whatever we need to do to survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what are your thoughts about that balance between, you still got to keep your job and you still have to be present and aware of what people can bear?
Mm-hmm.
How much can they bear of me? And that's a real question. If you're serious about taking care of your family, we have to ask the question.
I have to say, I am really blessed to have a lot of the younger generation around me, because they are so inspirational and really being aware of showing up unapologetically the way that they are. So I'm learning a lot from this younger generation. And I believe that each of those steps, for me, when I talk about showing up authentically yourself, you're not going to show up in a way that's not authentic. So I understand what she's saying. It's, if someone isn't in that area in their mind where they're like, this isn't going to be who I am at my job, they're talking to their employer, they're not connected to that. You're only going to allow yourself to show up in the capacity that you feel aligned with yourself.
That's right.
Anything where you're feeling a roadblock, if you're having a limited belief, if you're like, I can't do this because I'm afraid of something, then it's not time for you to do that yet. Right? You don't want to ever put yourself in a position where you have friction to where you're not, that's not being your authentic self. So I think that's what we have to really focus on, is being your authentic self doesn't mean doing something that's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to make you feel fearful of your safety, but it will allow you your opportunity to say what you mean to say how you mean to say it, and being in control in how you are doing it.
Well, and that idea of honoring your values comes to mind. What you were speaking to was, these values are about breaching our personal, our moral values, our what we believe to be ourselves and how the world sees us, all of that. And having to make these decisions all the time about, if I'm this person, this is how they're going to read me. Okay, I can't say that. I can't do this. Is Black Girl Decision Tree, where you take every instance and you got to filter it through. What is the circumstance? What's at risk? What is going to be the outcome? What's the long game? What's the, all of these things that we do all the time. It's not always, it doesn't serve our greater being. It is making us sick. It is making us tired. It is making us unable to give love in the fullness of who we are, in the ways that it really is amazing to be loved on, by a sister. And
absolutely,
we can't access love. We can't ask for it. We can't expect it. We can't. So we're just in this emotional purgatory where we can't be full because of these feelings that we can't unpack, and we don't know what to do with all of the feelings that we have.
Absolutely. And that is the exact reason why I started exactly what I was doing, because I was feeling like I was on that cycle. And my whole idea of coaching, health coaching, and then how it moved to trauma-informed coaching was because I was tired of that. I was tired of feeling that way. And the way that my mind works, I'm a problem solver. So that's how I feel. There has to, for every problem, there's an answer, there's a solution, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if I'm feeling this way, I want to figure out what else can I do. And that's what started understanding that when you are constantly in this trauma response and that's an engine that's running that way. And like you said, there's nothing else coming in. And we can't get to that healing without getting on that other side. And that's rest. We're constantly in that sympathetic, right? Responding to what's going on. That respond when someone asks you a question, instead of being, what are you asking me that for? Because you're just constantly you're like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. My mind was over here. But when we connect to that emotion, why am I feeling this way? And there's different modalities and ways that we can just connect. But that's the importance of healing, is that autonomic vagus nervous system. We have to connect to the body. That's why we hear a lot of those really flashy words. The body keeps score, go inward for healing. It's because they understand now the secret sauce. We have to go into the central nervous system. And by doing that, we can, but then it's like, well, what does that mean? What do you mean going into, because you have to feel it. So when you start having those emotional connections like that anger, when I say connect to it, really connect to it. Scan your body. If you're feeling discomfort in your back, guess what? That's your emotion. You connect to, okay, get yourself in a place where you can either grab a book, get some napkins so you can cry, but allow yourself to really connect to that sensation that you're feeling. And over time, when you're meditating, asking yourself, what does this emotion, this energy that I'm feeling, what experience is this connected to? And then when you get to that experience and you write it down, and I know we talked about this yesterday about the truths, like, is this true? You spoke about the cookie and being punished for eating a cookie. Is this true? Am I in my adult age, am I going to get punished for eating this cookie? No. But did I feel this way when I was younger? Yes. And how did that manifest in my body today? You can kind of allow yourself that curiosity to go inward and start healing within the body. That is how we condition ourselves to go from that constant trauma response to that parasympathetic, that rest and digest. That's where we're going to get that balance. And that's when we're going to start to be able to heal. The more we are able to connect to those emotions that are not the way we want to show up, that are triggering, we can start building up our capacity. And then we'll be able to start. I always say the example is when you start realizing that things that used to irritate you don't irritate you as much, it's because you're building up that capacity to deal with it, And we have to give ourselves as Black women the freedom to do that.
What came up while you were talking was, this self-judgment and all the things we've been talking about over the last, two episodes here. And I think so much of this too is we are mad at ourselves for things too, right? Like there's this way that we move in the world that, kind of feeds off of those things that are lying dormant, right? If somebody says, Michelle, you are I don't know, whatever, something that that you're not even close to, it doesn't land for you in the same way that it's like, you are not enough. You will never be. That hits in a way different because do we have those deep-seated feeling of like, I am not enough, right? And I have to work harder and I have to do all these things. So part of it too is forgiveness, this forgiving ourselves, right? And one of the things that rest does, when you say it, like, it calms you down, it allows you to stop and see yesterday we talked about perception, perspective of, whoa, why am I beating myself up for something that the 13 or the 21-year-old or the 30-year-old me did, surviving the best way they could, but I'm still carrying it like that person, is still alive in my body. I'm so not those people anymore, but I keep that Michelle version of Michelle centered when I don't forgive myself. When I say, oh, Michelle, Michelle Houghton, here she comes. She said something about my hair, and it brings up all of the stuff of you're ugly, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does all of these things because we keep this trauma actively alive by thinking about it, bringing it back, comparing it to what people are saying, and interpreting what people are saying through the lens of that brokenness. And so part of rest allows us to forgive these parts of ourselves that we are infuriated with, that we are ashamed about, that, we all have our skeletons, and we all have things that we struggle with as part of our history, but we just don't allow them to be part of our history. We have to own it as a true part of who we are still.
Yeah.
So
I know that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say judgment is something that I struggle with as well. I am a Virgo. I am my harshest critic. And when you were speaking about that judgment, something just really resonated with me. And I don't actually give myself this credit or this nod. And when you talked about having that judgmental thought and then changing the perspective, pivoting it, changing how you identify with it, giving just that awareness of the fact that, wait, so I just switched this idea of myself. I might have judged myself harshly yesterday, but just in this moment of talking it through, I just realized how valuable I am right now in this day. So we have, even just speaking about it, whether it be in the mirror, giving us that space and that safety to do it is something I feel is very powerful, because it doesn't have to be I think sometimes we think that this shift have to be so big and it's going to happen overnight, and we don't pay honor to the little steps that we do, and even just the mindset, and just that was really beautiful how you said that, and I never even thought about it in that way.
Well, I need to echo what you said and really celebrate something you said in those words that kind of strike. I was going to say strike a chord, but I can't even say that anymore. I think of Kendrick Lamar. But it really kind of settled with me was we don't give ourselves the credit. We don't give ourselves the credit of, okay, let's say all that stuff was true. So you're telling me you went through all that and you're still standing? That's called a win. That's called I'm here. That's called I'm here. Right. And all that I've been through and I'm still here is the celebration. It is the story. It is the headline. Right. But we're so busy focusing on all of that we're not even present to the fact of, wait a minute, I'm here and I am successful and my children are thriving. Wait, and I don't have, I'm able to say no now, but before I couldn't say, all of these little things, like you said, that add to this big. So we want all of that breakthrough to happen right here. And that's how we know we've won. That's not how I go to the gym. If I go 2 days, I'm not going to see no difference.
But we think that we are, like, we're waiting for that 6-pack after day 2. Or like, what happened? It's supposed to, it's all or nothing. But I think that's what we have to start being more gentle with ourselves first. And once we start being gentle with ourselves, law of attraction, we're going to see it being reciprocated. But we have to ask ourselves and have that tough conversation with ourselves. What do we need? What do I need in this moment? And write it down and not be apologetic about it. If it's, I need some sex, then write it down, right? We're human. If it's, I need to be heard, then write it down, right? And allowing us to feel that without that judgment.
And I'm going to see that, what do you need, and raise you, what do you want? Like, that's something we don't even, like, I can't even get there, right? Somebody asked me the other day, what brings you joy? And I was like, And for me, as an introvert, what brings me joy is, if I find something good on Netflix and it's already 2 seasons in and I can binge watch, being alone, being with myself, my dogs, in my home, there's snacks, that is my happy place. No question. I mean, during the pandemic, I was like, oh yeah, I was made for this moment. What, government sanctioned, leave me the hell alone? Yes. Oh, but there's millions of people dying. That part doesn't work, right? But I think that when I think about joy, now that gives me comfort and it gives me peace. But joy, I was like, I got to think about that because I've never had joy as a center focal point. I'm healthy, I'm safe, I'm comfortable, I got heat, I got food. Like those are the things that we interpret as joy. I'm talking real joy. I'm talking that thing when you're like, when the time goes by so fast because you're doing something that is just filling up your body. And so that's another part that we're missing because we're so busy fighting that we're not even able to consider, right? So I'm loving what do we need, but what do we want? That's a whole different thing because now you have to challenge yourself to dare and run the risk of hoping for something, of imagining something it looks so far away because where you feel now is like, I can't even tell you what I need, let alone hope for what I want, articulate it.
When you said, what do you want? As soon as you said that, I heard my mother, she used to always tell me this when I was younger, you want in one hand and shit in the other, which one's going to fill up faster? And what that did was when you said, what do you want? I immediately in my head was like, ooh, Michelle, don't say what you want because you're about to get, but I am now going to be 45. And I literally just had that response to the question, what do you want? And that's how ingrained our childhood is. And we have to restructure that mindset because it's like, oh, wait, I can actually envision a want. And then whatever you're thinking, go past that, blow the ceiling off of it, right?
Yep.
What has helped me with that want, I am a huge cheerleader. I love cheering for people. I love celebrating people. So I've challenged myself to use that same type of excitement towards the things that I want. It's uncomfortable because no one's taught me how to want. Well, they've taught me that wanting is bad. So if you were taught wanting is bad, then how do you now retrain the way that you look at wanting as something as good, that's a motivation, something that's good, as if it's okay for you to want something without guilt?
One of my favorite shows is Ted Lasso, and one of the things that this bartender May says is, "It's the hope that kills you." It's the hope that kills you because if you don't hope, you won't be upset. If you don't want for anything, right? And a lot of Buddhist teachings are like wanting and desire is the source of all your pain. If you don't want anything, you can just kind of sail through life and allow what is happening to happen. There should be something there that calls us as individuals, not just mothers, not just sisters, not just daughters of people we got to care for, not as partners. There's something that has to call us forward, I believe.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And it falls in line with just connecting with purpose. Everyone has a purpose. I know some people like, I don't have a purpose. Everyone has a purpose. Whether your purpose is just sharing your story to someone, I don't know. But when you connect to that and you give yourself hope, you give yourself imagination, desire, all of these things, you can connect with self. And you was kind of going back around, you were talking about, showing up in the world. Sometimes you were talking about your angel email. And when you have purpose and you have desire and you're connecting, you're asking yourself, what do you want? And you're stepping up in your own authentic self, those concerns no longer are concerns. You're not worrying about how someone's going to perceive you. You're not worrying about if someone's going to, I'm going to be real honest. And you spoke about being in situations that are scary. We have amazing men and women, Black men and women, who go into situations as activists because it's their purpose. They're fully aware of what they're doing. They're connected to it. And when you sit and you speak with them, they weren't always in that capacity, right? It's things that we have to work within ourselves. And I think once we allow ourselves to ask what we want, I love how you said that, connect to it. When we realize that we are coming with, when we have a situation where we're showing up in anger, that's not what we want, or if we're feeling we want to do more, what does that look like for us? Give ourselves that freedom to even be explorative about it. What are you going to lose? Okay.
And I had a coach that always used to say, everything that you're perceiving in the world, you have a story about. Your story, you're not enough. That's a story that you're actively choosing. You're going to tell yourself a story anyway. You might as well pick one that empowers you, because it is. We're just going to make up and have it define us and have it, imprison us. You might as well pick a story that empowers you, right? And like you said, what else are we going to do while we're here?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good question that I asked myself that made me be more active. Is I was watching someone, and one of the questions they said is, when you are at the end of your life and you ask yourself, did you do everything that you wanted to do? And if right now you can say no, change it. And I was like, I wasn't happy with, I was like, you know what? No, I don't want this to be the end of my story. I want to do something else. I want to go deeper. I want to understand why. I want to connect more, and I think that's something that we all need to inspire. If we're not happy, let's just give ourselves the freedom to change it.
That's right. That's right. We're going to leave it right there. We're going to leave it right there. That's the perfect way to end. Michelle Houghton, thank you again for another amazing episode. We truly hope that, and I can speak for Michelle as well, that you got value. You can take away something from today that really, really changes your life. Now, next week, we're going to go deeper and we're going to talk about heartbreak, finding peace through the ache of lost love, and talk about those memories that linger in our mind, in our body, and how we heal. How we heal, whether it's a breakup or it's a divorce or a job that you want to leave, right? Some fading deep connection. We're really going to talk about, one, how rest becomes an essential act of this ability to soothe, but also recognizing it as a point of grief that is can still take our lives over and interrupt our ability to love newly and recreate our possibilities and our vision of what kind of love we can have. And you know what? Even if you want good sex, we don't even say that. Let's just name it all out there. Things that we are, I could never say. Listen, unclutch your pearls. We're going to have a real conversation. Thank you so much, Michelle. And we look forward to seeing y'all next time. Be well. Hey, we certainly hope you enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please do all the things you know to do on the socials. Like, subscribe, come back and join us. But above all, get rested.